was in a coma, my dad decided and said, "Let her go. We can't keep pouring money into this." But I survived. When I woke up, I didn't make a scene. I did something much worse. And thanks to me, over the next 2 days my dad went bankrupt and my mom started desperately calling me to beg. But My name is Jessica, and I'm about to tell you something that still makes my hands shake. While I was lying in a coma after a car accident, fighting for my life in that hospital bed, my own father stood over me and said, "Let her go. We can't keep pouring money into this." Yeah, you heard that right. My dad wanted to pull my plug because I was too expensive to keep alive. But here's the thing, I heard him. Every single word. They say coma patients can't hear anything, but I was there. Trapped in my own body, screaming inside while my brain slowly clawed its way back to consciousness. And in those dark weeks, I heard a lot more than my father bargained for. I heard my mother crying, begging him to wait just a little longer. I heard my little brother Michael, only 16, telling me about his day at school. And I heard my dad, successful Richard Montgomery, CEO of Montgomery Financial Consulting, discussing with his lawyers how to handle this situation and get back to normal. Do you think you could ever forgive something like that? The accident happened 3 months ago. I was 28, working as a forensic accountant in Boston. Ironic, right? That detail becomes important later. A drunk driver ran a red light, my car flipped twice. Traumatic brain injury, broken ribs, punctured lung. 30% chance of survival. 30%. Not zero. But apparently not enough for my dad. Here's what you need to understand about Richard Montgomery. He's all about numbers and return on investment. He built his consulting firm from nothing, worth about $8 million now. Sounds impressive, right? But I'd worked with enough wealthy clients to know something most people didn't. Dad's fortune was built on a foundation shakier than anyone realized. And I was about to use that knowledge. I woke up exactly 47 days after the accident. The doctors called it a miracle. My mom sobbed. Michael refused to leave my side. But my dad? I swear I saw disappointment flash across his face before he managed a tight smile. "Jessica," he said carefully. "Thank God you're all right." I just stared at him. Didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just looked into his eyes and said nothing. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" my mom asked, worried. "I'm fine, Mom." Then I turned to my father. I heard everything. The color drained from his face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I heard you. Let her go. We can't keep pouring money into this." "That's what you said, wasn't it, Dad?" My mom gasped. Michael's hand tightened around mine. And my father couldn't find a single word. Do you know what that moment feels like? When you realize your own parent sees you as nothing more than a line item on a balance sheet. He tried to backtrack, stammering about misunderstandings and stress. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He'd meant every word. That night, alone in my hospital room, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream or cause a scene. That's what he'd expect, what he could smooth over with his charm and checkbook. No, I was going to do something much worse. You see, I'm a forensic accountant. It's my job to find financial discrepancies and uncover fraud. And I'd spent 5 years learning from the best. Plus I'd grown up watching my father work, occasionally helping with tasks for his company. I knew things he'd probably forgotten I knew. Over the next week, while my body healed, I started making phone calls. Quietly. To old colleagues. To contacts in banking. To people who owed me favors. And I started pulling threads. My grandmother Margaret, my mom's mother, was the only one I told. She visited every afternoon, and unlike everyone else, she didn't pretend everything was fine. The third day after I woke up, I asked for a moment alone with her. "He tried to kill me, Grandma," I said, my voice breaking. "My own father." She took my hand. At 73, she was still sharp with steel-gray eyes that missed nothing. "I heard the rumors. I didn't want to believe them. I need your help," I whispered. "And I need you to trust me, even if what I'm about to do seems crazy." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "What do you need?" That's when I told her my plan. Imagine being able to dismantle someone's entire world in just 48 hours. Imagine showing them exactly what it feels like to be disposable. Because that's exactly what I was about to do. First, I needed to get out of that hospital. I needed my computer, my files, and I needed my father to think everything was fine. That I was still his sweet, forgiving daughter. So I smiled. I hugged him when he visited. I even thanked him for being there for me. The look of relief on his face made me sick. But it also made me more determined. 3 weeks later, they released me. I moved back into my Boston apartment despite my mom wanting me to stay with them in Connecticut. "I'll visit soon," I promised. "I just need time to process everything." Dad looked pleased. Probably thought I'd just forget all about what he'd said. He had no idea what was coming. That first night back, I sat at my desk until 3 a.m. pulling together everything I needed. Records. Transactions. Patterns only someone with my training would notice. And there it was, the thing I'd suspected but never confirmed. My father's company was involved in some very creative accounting. Not quite illegal but dancing so close to the line you'd need a microscope to see the difference. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Clients not particularly interested in following tax laws. And I had proof of all of it. Imagine what I decided to do then. The next morning I made my first call. Then my second. By the end of the day I'd contacted 6 different entities. The IRS, the SEC, 2 of Dad's largest clients, his primary bank, and a journalist who specialized in financial crimes. I didn't lie. I didn't fabricate anything. I simply pointed them in the right direction and let them discover the truth themselves. Then I waited. It took exactly 41 hours for everything to fall apart. 41 hours. That's all it took for my father's world to start crumbling. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning. Dad's primary bank froze 3 of his business accounts pending an investigation. I know because Grandma Margaret called me. She still had friends everywhere, including someone at that very bank. "It started," she said quietly. "Are you sure about this, Jessica?" Was I sure? I thought about lying in that hospital bed, hearing him calculate my worth. "Yes, Grandma. I'm sure." The second domino fell that afternoon. The IRS showed up at Montgomery Financial Consulting with a warrant. Not a request, a warrant. They walked out with boxes of files and hard drives. I heard later that Dad stood in the parking lot, watching them load everything into their van, his face completely white. Do you think he was scared yet? Because honestly, I hoped he was terrified. By Wednesday morning it got better. Or worse, depending on whose side you're on. One of his biggest clients, a real estate developer named Harrison who accounted for almost 30% of Dad's revenue, called to terminate their contract. Apparently, the SEC had contacted him with some interesting questions about certain transactions. Harrison didn't want to be anywhere near the investigation that was coming. Then the second client called. Then a third. My phone rang around noon. It was Mom and she was crying. "Jessica, something's happening. Your father. The company. I don't understand what's going on, but people keep calling, accounts are frozen, clients are leaving." Her voice broke. "He's in his office with the door locked. He won't talk to me." I felt a twinge of guilt hearing her cry. My mom didn't deserve this, she was collateral damage. But I'd thought this through. She'd be okay. She had her own money, family money that Dad had never touched. Michael would be fine too. This was about making Dad feel exactly what I felt. Helpless, worthless, disposable. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said softly. "I'm sure it'll work itself out." What else could I say? "Don't worry, I orchestrated the whole thing." Wednesday evening, the journalist published his article. It was beautiful, really. Montgomery Financial under investigation for potential tax fraud and money laundering. He'd done his homework, connected dots I'd only hinted at, found sources I didn't even know existed. The article went viral in financial circles. By Thursday morning it had spread everywhere. That's when my phone started blowing up. Texts from old college friends who'd seen the news. Calls from extended family members asking if I knew what was happening. Even Michael called, scared and confused. "Jess, what's going on? Dad hasn't come out of his office. Mom's freaking out. They're saying the company might be shut down." "I don't know, Mickey," I lied, using my old nickname for him. "I'm sure Dad will figure it out. He always does, right?" But Dad wasn't figuring anything out. Because on Thursday afternoon, exactly 41 hours after my first call, the final domino fell. His business partner, a man named Tom Reichert who owned 30% of the company, filed an emergency motion to dissolve their partnership. Tom had been my dad's friend for 15 years, but he wasn't going down with this ship. The motion included a lawsuit claiming Dad had engaged in fraudulent practices without Tom's knowledge. True or not, it didn't matter. It was over. By Thursday evening, Montgomery Financial Consulting was essentially dead. No clients. No access to funds. Partners turning on each other. And an investigation that was just getting started. My father had gone from millionaire CEO to financial pariah in less than 2 days. Imagine watching everything you built disappear that fast. I was sitting in my apartment eating takeout and watching the news coverage when my phone rang. Mom again. But this time her voice wasn't just sad, it was desperate. "Jessica, please. You have to come home. Your father. I'm worried about him. He's not eating, he's not sleeping. The lawyers are saying terrible things. We might lose the house. And he just keeps asking." She paused. "He keeps asking if you knew. If you had anything to do with this." My heart was pounding. Why would I have anything to do with it? "I don't know. That's what I told him. But he seems convinced." He keeps saying you're a forensic accountant, you'd know how to. Oh God, Jessica, this is crazy. You wouldn't do something like this. Right? Tell me you wouldn't. This was the moment. I could confess or I could keep playing innocent. Mom, I'm still recovering from almost dying. Do you really think I have the energy to orchestrate some elaborate revenge scheme? It wasn't technically a lie. I let her draw her own conclusions. She exhaled shakily. You're right. I'm sorry. This is it's too much. Please come home. Just for a few days. Your father needs to see that we're still a family. A family. That's rich, coming from the man who tried to unplug his daughter to save money. But I agreed to visit that weekend. Not because I felt guilty, well maybe a little, but because I wanted to see it. I wanted to look my father in the eye and watch him fall apart the way I almost did. Do you think that makes me a terrible person? Maybe it does. I'm still figuring that out myself. Friday morning I drove to Connecticut. The 3-hour drive gave me time to think, to prepare. Grandma Margaret had warned me it would be bad, but I wasn't quite ready for what I saw. The house looked the same from outside, huge, pristine, expensive. But inside it felt like a funeral home. Mom met me at the door looking 10 years older than she had a month ago. Michael was home from school, pale and quiet. He's in his study, Mom whispered. He's been in there since yesterday. I knocked on the study door. No answer. Dad? It's Jessica. Can I come in? Silence. Then finally, it's unlocked. I opened the door and almost didn't recognize him. My father, always perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, looked destroyed. Unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot. Papers were scattered everywhere. Empty glasses lined his desk. He looked up at me and for just a second I saw something that made my chest tight. He looked broken. You did this, he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. I closed the door behind me. Did what? Don't. His voice cracked. Don't insult me by playing dumb. You're a forensic accountant. You knew exactly where to look, who to call, how to make it all fall apart. This has your fingerprints all over it. We stared at each other. And honestly, I was surprised by what came out of my mouth next. You wanted to let me die, I said, my voice shaking. You stood over my hospital bed and decided I wasn't worth the money. He flinched like I'd slapped him. So yes, Dad. I did this. I showed you exactly what it feels like to be disposable. What happened next? Well, that's when things got really complicated. My father stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he did something I never expected. He laughed. Not a happy laugh. A broken, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. You're right, he said, dropping his head into his hands. God help me, you're absolutely right. Wait, what? I'd prepared for anger, for denial, for him to kick me out. But this, the mission, I didn't know what to do with that. Dad. No, let me finish. He looked up and I saw tears in his eyes. Actual tears. That night in the hospital. Jessica, I wasn't thinking straight. The doctors kept saying 30% chance, the bills were piling up and I panicked. I thought I was being practical, but I was being a coward. I wanted to stay angry. I'd earned that anger. But seeing him like this. You tried to kill me, I whispered. I know. His voice broke. And you destroyed me for it. Fair trade, I guess. Is it though? Do you think revenge ever really feels as good as you imagine? Before I could respond, the study door burst open. Mom stood there and she looked furious, not sad anymore, furious. Richard, the bank just called. They're starting foreclosure proceedings on the house. He turned to me. Jessica, did you know about this? The way she asked made my stomach drop. He knew. Somehow she knew. Mom, I can explain. You did this. Her voice went cold. You destroyed your own father? He tried to let me die. He made a mistake. He was shaking. A terrible, horrible mistake that he would have regretted. But you calculated this. You planned it. What does that make you? I'd never seen my mom look at me like that. Like I was a stranger. Michael appeared behind her, his face pale. Jess? Is it true? The disappointment in his eyes hurt more than anything Dad had said. Mickey, you don't understand. I understand that Dad messed up, he said quietly. But you're supposed to be better than him. That's what you always said. You're better than his obsession with money. But you just proved you're exactly the same. That hit like a punch to the gut. Was he right? Had I become exactly what I hated? Then Dad's phone rang. He looked at the screen and went even paler. It's Tom. My ex-partner. Don't answer it, Mom said. But he did. Put it on speaker. Richard, you need to hear this. Tom's voice was urgent. I just got a call from the prosecutor's office. They're expanding the investigation. They think I was involved in everything, that I knew about the offshore accounts, the shell companies. They're threatening to charge me too. Dad's hand started shaking. Tom, I swear I'll tell them you weren't. It's too late for that. My lawyer says the evidence makes me look complicit. My wife is leaving me. My kids won't talk to me. Tom's voice cracked. 20 years of friendship, Richard. 20 years, and this is how it ends. Because you cut corners. The line went dead. Dad looked at me with something new in his eyes. Not anger. Fear. Jessica, the investigation. How far does it go? What exactly did you tell them? And that's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. I'd pointed them toward Dad's shady dealings. But I hadn't thought about who else might get caught in the blast radius. Tom. Dad's assistant Sarah, who'd probably processed some of those questionable transactions. Maybe even the accountant Dad used, a quiet guy named Peter who had a wife and 3 kids. What had I done? I just told them to look at the offshore accounts, I stammered. And the client transactions from 2023. I didn't think. You didn't think, Mom said icily. That's exactly right. You were so focused on revenge that you didn't think about anyone else. The doorbell rang. We all froze. Michael went to check, came back looking terrified. There are 2 FBI agents at the door. They're asking for Dad. FBI. I'd contacted the IRS and SEC, but FBI? Dad stood up slowly. This is it then. He looked at me one more time. I hope it was worth it, Jessica. As he walked out of the study, I felt something twist in my chest. This wasn't satisfaction. This wasn't justice. This was just destruction. I followed them to the foyer. 2 agents stood there, badges out. Mr. Montgomery, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Michael was crying, and I just stood there frozen. As they led Dad out in handcuffs, he turned back one last time. Not to Mom or Michael. To me. I deserved this, he said quietly. But they didn't. Remember that. The door closed. Mom wouldn't look at me. Michael walked away without a word. I was alone in that massive foyer, and suddenly my apartment in Boston seemed very far away. Grandma Margaret appeared from the kitchen. I hadn't even known she was there. You should go, sweetheart. Grandma, I didn't mean for. I know what you meant. But intentions don't change consequences. She squeezed my shoulder. Go home. Let them process this. I drove back to Boston in a daze. What had I done? I'd wanted Dad to suffer, yes. But I'd also destroyed my family, ruined innocent people's lives, and turned myself into exactly what I'd accused my father of being. Someone who saw people as collateral damage. When I got home, there were 17 missed calls. Reporters who'd somehow gotten my number. A lawyer asking if I needed representation. And one text from a number I didn't recognize. You made a mistake. Call me. I stared at that text for an hour before I finally called back. The voice that answered changed everything again. Jessica Montgomery? The voice was male, older, unfamiliar. Who is this? My name is David Chin. I'm the lead prosecutor on your father's case. He paused. We need to talk. In person. My heart stopped. Am I in trouble? That depends on what you tell me. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Boston across from a tired-looking man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You triggered this investigation, he said simply. The tips came from your contacts, your information. So I'll ask you directly, are you willing to testify? Testify? Against my own father. He committed crimes, Ms. Montgomery. Serious ones. And from what we've uncovered in just 3 days, it goes deeper than even you probably realized. He slid a folder across the table. Take a look. I opened it. My hands started shaking. The offshore accounts I'd found? They weren't just for tax evasion. Dad had been laundering money for 3 different clients who were under investigation for fraud. Millions of dollars. Money that had funded everything from our house to my college education. Oh God, I whispered. Your father faces 15 to 20 years if convicted, Chin said. But there are others involved. His partner Tom, his assistant Sarah, possibly more. If you testify, if you help us understand the full scope, we can offer deals to the people who were just following orders. I looked up. You mean Tom and Sarah might not go to prison? Not if they cooperate. But we need someone who understands the financial structure. Someone who can explain it to a jury. He leaned forward. That someone is you. Do you know what it's like to hold your father's life in your hands? Because suddenly I did. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, we proceed without you and everyone gets maximum sentences. He stood up. For what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad person, Ms. Montgomery. I think you're someone who got hurt and lashed out. Now you get to decide who you really are. I went home and called Grandma Margaret. Testify, she said immediately. Not for revenge. For justice. There's a difference. Mom will never forgive me. Maybe not. But you'll forgive yourself. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tom's wife leaving him. About Sarah's kids. About Michael's disappointed face. About Mom's cold eyes. And about Dad saying, I deserved this. But they didn't. At 3 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Dad called from jail. He wants to talk to you. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say? But the next morning I did something unexpected. I went to the jail. Dad looked worse than before. Orange jumpsuit, shadows under his eyes, hands shaking slightly as he picked up the phone on his side of the glass. Jessica. His voice was hoarse. You came. The prosecutor wants me to testify, I said bluntly. Against you. To help reduce sentences for Tom and Sarah. He closed his eyes. You should do it. Wait. What? Dad. Listen to me. He opened his eyes and they were clearer than I'd seen them in days. I made terrible choices. Not just in the hospital before that. For years. I got greedy, I got careless, and I dragged good people into my mess. Tom didn't know about most of it. Sarah just did what I told her. They don't deserve to go down with me. But you're my father. And I tried to let you die. His voice broke. You were right to be angry. You were right to expose me. But now you have a chance to do something I never did. Think about someone other than yourself. Help them, Jessica. Even if it means I spend the next 20 years in prison. I was crying. Actually crying. I wanted you to suffer. But not like this. I know, sweetheart. I know. He put his hand against the glass. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You're stronger than I ever was. That afternoon I called David Chin. I'll testify. But I have conditions. We spent 3 days working out the details. I'd explain the financial structure, identify which transactions Dad had hidden from Tom and Sarah, and clarify who knew what. In exchange, Tom would get immunity if he cooperated. Sarah would get probation. And Dad would plead guilty to reduced charges. 10 years instead of 20. Mom didn't speak to me during the hearing. But when I finished testifying, when I'd done everything I could to save Tom and Sarah while still holding Dad accountable, she was waiting outside the courtroom. You did the right thing, she said quietly. Finally. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. The next week the strangest thing happened. Tom's lawyer called me. Mr. Reichert wants to meet with you. He has something to say. We met at the same coffee shop. Tom looked exhausted but grateful. You saved my life, he said simply. My wife came back. My kids are talking to me again. I get to keep my career. All because you told the truth. He hesitated. Your father asked me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting. Jessica, I can't undo what I said in that hospital. I can't give you back the trust one broke. But I can do this. I've set up a fund from what's left of my assets before they're seized. It's not much, but it's for your medical bills, your recovery, your future. It's the investment I should have made when it mattered. I love you. I'm sorry, Dad. I sat there staring at that letter, tears running down my face. What happens now? Tom asked gently. And honestly, I had no idea. 6 months later, things looked completely different. Dad was serving his 10-year sentence at a federal prison in Pennsylvania. Mom sold the Connecticut house and moved to a smaller place closer to the prison so she could visit weekly. Michael was back at school doing better than expected. Me. I was sitting in a victim impact support group, trying to figure out who I was after everything. I destroyed my family to punish my father, I told the group one evening. And I'm still not sure if I did the right thing. An older woman named Patricia spoke up. Did he face consequences for his actions? Yes. Did innocent people get spared because you told the truth? Yes. Then maybe it wasn't about right or wrong. Maybe it was just complicated. That word stuck with me. Complicated. The following month I did something I'd been avoiding. I went to visit Dad in prison. He looked healthier somehow. Calmer. Like the weight of his lies had been lifted. I'm getting my accounting degree, he said. In here. Figured I should learn how to do it legally. He smiled weakly. Maybe when I get out you can teach me the right way. That's 10 years from now, Dad. I know. But I'll wait. He leaned forward. Jessica, I need to tell you something. That night in the hospital, I was drowning in debt I hadn't told anyone about. Bad investments, loans I couldn't cover. I was panicking and I took it out on you. The most precious thing in my life, and I treated you like an expense. Why didn't you just tell us you needed help? Pride. Stupid, destructive pride. He wiped his eyes. Prison gives you time to think. And I realized something. You breaking me down was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was living a lie. Now I'm not. Do you think people can really change? Because sitting there I almost believed they could. Michael came with me the next time. Then Mom joined us. And slowly, so slowly, we started feeling like a family again. Not the same family. A different one. Honest. Broken. But real. Tom got his life back and started his own consulting firm. Completely legitimate this time. He hired Sarah as his office manager. They both sent me thank you cards every year on the anniversary of the trial. Grandma Margaret told me something wise at Christmas dinner that year. Revenge is like poison. You take it hoping someone else will die. But healing? That's the antidote. And it tastes terrible going down. He was right. Last month I got a letter from Dad. He'd been approved for a prison program where inmates help other prisoners prepare for their financial futures post-release. Teaching people the right way, he wrote. Finally doing something worthwhile. I keep that letter on my desk. People ask me if I regret what I did. Honestly, I regret how I did it. I wish I'd confronted Dad directly instead of burning everything down. I wish I'd thought about the collateral damage. I wish I'd chosen honesty over revenge. But would I have gotten here without it? I don't know. My therapist says I'm still processing. Mom says I'm healing. Michael says I'm less scary now, which I think is his way of saying I smile more. And Dad? In his last letter, he wrote, "Thank you for holding me accountable. Thank you for saving Tom and Sarah. And thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on you. I'll spend the next 8 years earning back your trust. However long it takes. 8 years. He's already served 2. I think I'll wait. So that's my story. A daughter who almost died, a father who betrayed her, and a family that fell apart before learning how to be whole again. Not a perfect ending but an honest one. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love if you could hit the like button. And if something resonated with you, or if you disagreed with my choices, please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone and your perspectives mean more than you know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for letting me share the messiest, most complicated chapter of my life with you.